Hard to believe all the videos that I've made. I've not done this already, but in this video, we're going to do a direct comparison between the Pixel Fold and the OnePlus Open in terms of just general performance. Of course, this is running the Google Tensor G2, which is relatively old at this point, and this is running the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, which is also relatively old at this point. But everyone will tell you that the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, is the far faster system on a chip. But I will tell you, the Pixel Fold in normal usage is going to be surprisingly performant. There's only one way to really, truly settle this, and it's to put both of these phones down and put them both to the test. So if you can't tell, we have the OnePlus Open over here and the Pixel Fold over here. And what we're going to do is we're going to launch apps side by side on both of these. What a lovely photo that Google Photos has decided to pull up for us there. Now, I know some people will say, Shane, all phones launch all apps really, really quickly now. And honestly, that's kind of my point for the opening part of this video, where we're going to be launching apps side by side. But we're going to do it anyways, just to kind of underline that point that, yes, on paper, this is the faster processor. It's going to benchmark higher. But in practice, let's see how much of a difference there actually is. And we're going to start things off by closing everything out so that we are starting with a clean slate. We're going to start off by launching the Google Play Store. And in this instance, slight win here. Let's jump to an app that is always quite slow on all of my devices to fully load, and that is Feedly, where we have a pretty substantial win for the Pixel Fold. How about a lighter app like CX File Explorer? Pretty much instantaneous on both of these. For some reason, this one has decided, probably because it's where this lamp is sitting, it's decided to be much brighter than it probably needs to be. Let's do Discord next. Pretty darn close for both of them. Let's say slight win for the OnePlus Open. How about Twitter? Again, slight win for the OnePlus Open. We're talking about, what would that be, like an eighth of a second, something like that. Let's jump over to Threads. Same kind of pattern going on, ever so slight wins pretty consistently for the OnePlus Open. How about Wise, another application that is fairly heavy, fairly slow to load. That was really, really similar. Let's go to my outside cameras, and I accidentally misclicked there. So let's close out of both of those, and let's try that again. That time, that one won. You can see the inconsistencies here. Let's go to the outside cameras, and again, really similar, but this one did actually get the cameras running faster. How about everyone's favorite app, YouTube? That is a pretty substantial win for the OnePlus Open. I'm sorry, for the Pixel Fold. Maybe I'm just used to or expecting the OnePlus Open to win, and that's why I misspoke. So at that point, we have quite a few apps open. Let's go to our recents, and let's go all the way back to the first app, which was the Google Play Store, and let's see if either one of them have ejected that app from RAM, and the answer was no. So I'd say, hey, normal real-world usage, things are very, very similar. But we do need to kind of show some other things there, right? So let's go into both applications. We've triggered split screen here. We'll trigger split screen here as well. That was kind of strangely laggy, but we'll roll with it. Let's open up YouTube. Again, strangely laggy. So we're going to go back over here. Boom, boom. Okay, so both of these are running. Obviously, Open Canvas is doing its thing over here, which is a little bit different, but we'll just roll with it for now. On both, let's grab the settings application and let's replace YouTube on both. And you'll see it's really, really similar. This actually opened up buried in the settings for some reason, and it doesn't seem like it wants to leave that portion of the settings. Not really sure what's going on there. Yeah, you can see that having two apps open isn't really going to change any of the results that we have been seeing so far. Let's try grabbing the NFL app and let's replace settings with that. See what happens there. We have loaded into Open Canvas and we're larger. Over here, we're going to the sign-in screen. So both of these are running about as slowly as the NFL app usually runs because it's just not a well-made application. But again, you can see having two apps open isn't going to change anything. When I make videos like this, sometimes people will say to me, yeah, but you didn't have them in split screen. You didn't have two apps open at once. And I really have to just kind of underline here, however you want to put it, that really doesn't make a substantial difference at all to what we are doing. These phones are more than fast enough that even with multiple applications open, things are going to open up just as fast. I think I have Max signed in on both of them, so we'll do that as well. See which one of them manages to get in quicker. Well, there's a win for the Pixel Fold. Actually, a fairly substantial win for the Pixel Fold. Now, I do have to also point out the fact that the OnePlus Open can, of course, open up a third application. If I do that correctly, I could actually put it down here to be a third application. I forgot. And then if you have two applications open, you can also have a floating window on top of that, whereas over here, that is pretty much what you see is what you get type situation. So in terms of that normal everyday usage, just launching applications, launching a second application, do either one of these devices seem like they have a large lead over the other? Are the benchmarks that tell you that this phone is twice as fast? Is that actually predictive of what it's like to use the phone and launch applications? Well, we've all watched the same thing. You tell me. Let's go ahead and close all of these out. And now we're going to launch 3D Mark, and we're going to have the Pixel Fold get relatively embarrassed by the Wildlife Extreme test. Let's fire that up. We'll skip ahead until we see the results. And here are the results for that. Yes, the Pixel Fold does have the slower GPU, getting around about half the score of the OnePlus Open. Let's go down and look at the temperature though. So we're at 32 to 33 degrees Celsius versus about 28 degrees Celsius with the OnePlus Open. So another thing people talk about all the time is the Pixel Fold, it runs hot, it overheats. Let me just tell you, this is my experience. Mine has never done any more than get a little bit warm, which is something that all of my very thin devices have all done at different times. This is the internal temperature, obviously. Let's flip both of these things over real quick, and maybe we can get like a temperature determination here. We'll use the Pixel 8 for this. So we're looking at about 90 Fahrenheit there, about 95, 96 Fahrenheit there. Looks pretty consistently to be in that 95 region. I think I found the hottest spot already. And it may already be beginning to cool. So we're talking about 5 degrees. And again, this was after running a benchmark. And I must also sort of make something else clear. There's a difference between getting warm and overheating, right? So like that's the other thing that drives me crazy. People, I see these comments, my device overheats, and you'll ask them, does it like pop up a warning and say something can't happen, like it's shutting something down, or is it just warm in your hand? And 9 times out of 10, the answer I've gotten is, well, it's just warm in my hand. It's not actually overheating. It's just a little bit warm. So obviously, the OnePlus Open should have a pretty substantial lead in terms of graphical output, gaming, things like that. I'm not going to download Genshin Impact and crank up the settings and play it a bunch and give you my thoughts because I'm just not a big mobile gamer. If that's what I'm going to give you, it's a benchmark, and it's not, the like end all be all, right? There are going to be some variables here and there, but again, by and large, the OnePlus Open should have a pretty significant advantage or lead in gaming. The Pixel Fold can absolutely play games and it'll be just fine. But if you want the best frame rates, you got to go with something like the OnePlus Open that's going to have that Snapdragon processor. It's just going to be better in terms of GPU tasks. I do want to kind of double back, though, to the efficiency thing, right? So we all know that the Pixel Fold, the Tensor processors do get a little bit warm, but I think that their reputation might go a little bit beyond what is actually like relevant. And it's kind of like a microcosm of the Pixel devices, their performance, their processors in general. Yes, it can get a little bit warm, but speaking strictly on my experience with several Tensor devices, now actually 3 or 4 Tensor devices that I've run, they've all gotten a little warm at times, but I, again personally, have never had any of them overheat, and they've all had somewhere between good and great battery life. You would expect, and people on the internet will tell you, that this device should have, and maybe does have, worse battery life than this device. But I'm here to tell you that in reality, they are remarkably close. And if you're running the most recent updates on your Pixel Fold, I bet you can echo this for me. It's pretty darn good, guys. Like, I would say this device pretty routinely get somewhere in the 5, 6, 7, maybe even sometimes 8 hours of screen on time in a single day. And the OnePlus Open is right there with it. I mean, let me give you a good example right now. I'm at 41% on this device that's been unplugged since about 6 a.m. And I've got about 4 hours of screen on time. So we're right on pace for that 8-hour mark. Now, I do want to point out that it tends to drain faster the lower it goes. So you may be at 90% with an hour and a half of screen on time, but that doesn't mean you're going to be getting like 10 hours or 12 hours of screen on time. So I do expect that to drop off. My typical with this is right in that 6, 7, 8 hours of screen on time. So is there like a massive difference here? No, I literally have bounced between these two devices sometimes day after day. I've gone back and forth. And the only difference I see between these two in terms of battery is that this has wireless charging and that this doesn't, but it does have extremely fast wired charging. So there's advantages to both. But in terms of like, can they both get through the day for me? Does one feel like it just dies prematurely and the other one doesn't? No, not really. They're really, really similar. If you can't tell, I'm really trying to drive home the idea that you shouldn't read a spec sheet and you shouldn't make assumptions based on that. You should actually look at what it's like to use the thing in real life and base your decisions on that. So now let's jump into Google Photos and see what kind of differences in speeds we have with some of these things. So let's jump into Edit. Which one is going to get in first? Well, that was the OnePlus Open ever so slightly. Of course, if we go into like adjust, something like that, you know, when you're just moving some of these sliders around, there's going to be no lag on any of these things. So definitely no performance degradation there. Accidentally closed out of edit. But let's go over to tools and let's try Magic Eraser, which is actually something both of these devices will attempt to run if you have the Google One subscription. Either one of these can do this. Now, I don't have a great thing to like try and erase in this picture. Maybe I can do like, it's going to be horrible. I'm going to try to erase her nose. And I'm going to have to just zoom in over here. And I'm going to have to try and do the exact same thing. This is going to be awful. I'm sorry, Rose. But let's see what's going to happen here. It's horrifying. It was definitely a little bit faster on the OnePlus Open. I have restored your nose. I apologize for having done that to you. Just because I didn't do more extensive Magic Eraser testing in this video, let me just tell you it's the same, like in terms of like how it actually does, how it performs. Which one makes a more realistic or more believable like replacement for what you're erasing. It's the same thing. Not a huge difference, but it is a little bit faster on the OnePlus Open. And then they both have something that's blur or portrait blur, but these are actually, I think, slightly different names, but the effect seems to be the same. And as you can see here, if I move that point around, it's going to change what is in focus and so forth. And again, this is something that both of them are able to do with no real lag, no real slowdown. Let's pick a different photo and let's click on this one and see. I believe it's local on this device. This one had to download it, which was why that was a little bit slower. And let's go back into tools and let's do Magic Eraser again because it didn't scan for changes last time. So let's see. Here we go. So we're finding suggestions. Boom, boom. Really, really similar. So now we're in CapCut and we're going to take this video and we're going to crank it up all the way in all these settings. And we're going to see which phone will export this video file the quickest. Boom. I think that was pretty much simultaneous, and we're not too far apart, but there is a lead beginning to take effect over here. We're done in about a second and a half later. We're done over here. So this next test I want to quickly do might be really, really dumb. Typically, if you're going to do a speed test to check your Wi-Fi speed, you're going to do a one device and then on the other, not at the same time. But I'm going to make these two fight it out. They're going to duke it out and see which one of these can actually hit that higher peak Wi-Fi speed. Now, I do want to point out that the OnePlus Open does have Wi-Fi 7. Maybe you can see that there, maybe you can't. So in theory, it should be faster, but let's see if there's any significant difference there. Who wins out in this battle? And this is actually kind of surprising. Oh, we had a lead, but now we've taken the lead over here. But that was really close there for a second. The Wi-Fi 7, I think, is... Oh, but now we're picking up. Once it finished, we're rocketing, and we almost caught up. 640 down, 954 up. That is a pretty interesting result, and that makes me wonder, can we beat 640 if we're on our own? And I think the answer is going to be yes. We're actually getting close to 1,000 down. We'll let this finish, and we'll actually do this one as well. So 928 down, 854 up, and the OnePlus Open was screaming at 1,042 down. Not a huge difference between the two. Kind of stupid, kind of pointless, but it was entertaining for me at least. And just for the heck of it, we will see which one will actually reboot fastest. This is one of these things that people don't really talk about, but devices like my Samsung devices, like the Z Fold that I have, it takes so long to reboot. And once it comes back, it is like non-responsive for the first like 30 seconds or so. It runs absolutely horribly. So we're gonna see which one of these actually manages to come out of its boot first. And by a pretty good margin, it looks like the Pixel Fold is going to be the quicker booting of these two devices. We're finally here on the Open and we're logged in. Now, which one of them is able to launch something? It looks like they're both running pretty good. Fire up YouTube, some pretty heavy stutter there. We're loaded up. So I'm gonna have to give that category pretty easily to the Pixel Fold. Editor Shane would like to step in and add one more small bit of context before closing this video out. Something that I see in comments all the time is that the Pixel Fold should have waited and released with the Google Tensor G3 that, of course, the Pixel 8 and Pixel 8 Pro would eventually launch with. People say that the G2 is simply too old. Well, like I said, let's add a little bit of context here. So the Tensor G2 launched October of 2022 with the Pixel 7 line. The Pixel Fold released in June of 2023. That was 8 months after the G2 came out, and that was about 4 months before the G3 would come out. So people say it's an 8-month-old processor. The new one is only 4 months away. So for this added context, let's talk about the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 that powers the Z Fold 5. The Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 came out in December of 2022. The Z Fold 5 came out in August of 2023. That is 9 months later. And that's only 4 months before, presumably around 4 months before, the S24 should be launching, which will run the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3. So the first bit of context here is that the Z Fold and the Pixel Fold are in exactly the same position in terms of age of their processor. The other thing to think about here is let's rewind time and let's make the Pixel Fold wait for the G3. Okay, so you have two options here. One, the Pixel Fold can launch with the Pixel 8. So the Fold, the 8, and the 8 Pro all launch at the exact same time, and let's be honest, it's going to cannibalize some sales. There's a reason that Samsung launches the Z Fold as a half step, that Google is launching the Pixel Fold as a half step. There are reasons why they do this. So I don't think they're ever going to launch the Fold and their flagship side by side at the exact same time. So at that point, do you launch the G3 with the Pixel Fold and now the Pixel 8, I should say, comes out later, it's delayed. So now there's no flagship for 18 months instead of a year. I don't think that's smart either. So what you would end up doing is you end up leapfrogging the Pixel 8 and putting the Fold between the 8 and the Pixel 9. Well, guess what? If you do that, the Pixel Fold is only going to be a few months away from the Tensor G4, and we're going to be having the exact same conversation as we are now, but about waiting for the G4 instead of waiting for the G3. This is just the way it's going to be. It's the way it has always been with foldables. So there you go, guys. Hopefully several, at least somewhat useful demos so you can kind of understand how the Pixel Fold performs next to what should be a far faster device in the OnePlus Open. In my opinion, things are by and large extremely close. Even in situations where the OnePlus Open takes the lead, like processing that video. Of course, it was a longer video. That lead's going to get bigger. We're still talking about a really, really small difference, right? It was like a second and a half, maybe 2 seconds on that clip. Is that really that big of a deal? I would say if you're a gamer, that's where the biggest chasm is. But for most people, most of the time, not only is the Pixel Fold right there hanging tough, as they say, with the OnePlus Open, in my experience, it has been the smoother and more consistent device. You saw at least a couple of weird buggy things there, weird stuttery buggy things with the OnePlus Open just in this video. And I don't think you saw anything like that coming out of the Pixel Fold. The animations stay super consistent. They're bouncy, they're fluid. I like them a lot. So yes, I would say if you went through and you tallied them, like each one was like a round, the OnePlus Open probably won that fight. But it wasn't by a lot. It was a close, maybe it was a split decision. Maybe it was a close unanimous decision. but it's not like the Pixel Fold went out there and got beat up. You're going to have to decide what you care about the most, though. Are you someone who likes the consistency of the Pixel Fold and is okay with occasionally an app being an eighth of a second slower to open? That may be the way to go. Do you want that raw, bleeding edge speed that might, hit a speed bump here or there hard and make you think that your suspension's going to rocket through the front of your car, but boy, oh boy, can it haul you-know-what down the road? The OnePlus Open is a great way to go too. Don't take me wrong on this. I love both of these devices just for very different reasons. My primary objective here is to show everyone that yes, the Google Tensor G2 is technically slower and less efficient than the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, but in practice, the differences are teeny, tiny, and people are by and large blowing them absolutely out of proportion. Guys, thanks for watching. Subscribe for more content like this, and until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.